At the heart of the old town stood St. Agness Girls College, its old brick walls covered with green ivy that seemed to whisper secrets in the wind. For 3 generations, it had been called the pride of the nation, a place where governors' daughters sat next to market traders' children, all united under the school's golden motto, excellence through sacrifice. Parents would sell their homes, their farms, even borrow from dangerous moneylenders just to get their daughters a place within those special walls. They believed it was blessed, touched by God's grace. After all, every girl who graduated from St. Agnes went on to greatness, doctors who found cures, lawyers who never lost a case, politicians who rose to power with strange ease. The school's trophy room shined with awards that seemed almost magical in their number. But what the parents didn't know, what they refused to see, was the terrible prize written in blood and tears beneath each golden award. At the center of it all was headmistress Adesewa Okoro, a woman whose very presence made rooms fall silent. Tall and royal-looking, with grey-streaked hair always pulled into a perfect bun, she moved through the hallways like a queen walking through her kingdom. Students would quickly get out of her way, their polished shoes clicking against marble floors that reflected her image like dark water. Teachers spoke of her in quiet, respectful voices, and even the boldest parents lowered their voices in her office, surrounded by portraits of former headmistresses whose eyes seemed to follow every movement. But behind the school's perfect reputation, behind the shining awards, the perfect exam results, and the stream of successful graduates, lay a curse so old and terrible that even the oldest staff members dared not speak its name out loud. The storm arrived without warning on a Tuesday night in November, bringing with it winds that howled like wild spirits and rain that beat against the Gothic windows of St. Agnes like desperate fingers. Most students had long since gone to their dormitories, but Chioma Okafor, head girl and the school's most trusted prefect, remained in the library. Her mathematics textbook was spread before her as she finished her homework and prepared notes for the junior students she would help the next day. Chioma was the kind of girl parents pointed to when lecturing their own daughters, brilliant, hardworking, destined for greatness. Her father, a struggling mechanic, had given up everything to send her to St. Agnes, and she wore that burden like armor, pushing herself harder than any teacher ever could. As thunder rolled across the sky like the footsteps of giants, Chioma heard something that made her pen stop moving. From the storeroom beside the headmistress's office came the sound of drumming, not the messy sound of rain, but something steady, deliberate, old. At first, she told herself it was pipes making noise, or maybe boxes moving in the wind. But the sound continued, getting stronger and more demanding. Boom bie boom boom. Boom bie boom boom. Then came the whispers. They started as a rustling sound, like dry leaves blowing across concrete. But slowly, they became words, many voices speaking together, their tones empty and desperate. Save us, save us, don't let her take another, save us. Chioma's blood felt like ice water in her body. She knew she should run, should escape to her dormitory and hide her head under her pillow until morning came. Instead, she felt herself being pulled forward, as if invisible ropes were dragging her toward the sound. The hallway outside the headmistress's office was colder than it should have been, and the portraits on the walls seemed to lean forward in their frames, their painted eyes glistening in the fluorescent light. The storeroom door stood before her like a mouth waiting to swallow her whole. When she pressed her ear against the wood, it was wet, not with rain, but with something thicker, warmer. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. She comes for the bright ones, she always comes for the bright ones. Run, sister, run before you join us. Chioma stumbled backward, her heart beating against her chest like a caged bird. She ran through the empty hallways, her footsteps echoing behind her like chasing ghosts, but even when she reached the safety of her dormitory bed, the voices followed her into her dreams. Strange things had always clung to Edeora Okoro, the headmistress's daughter. Beautiful, brilliant, and destined for greatness, she was seen as untouchable. But in the weeks after Chioma's encounter with the strange whispers, the shadows around Edeora grew darker. At night, her bed shook violently, sending her roommates fleeing. Her textbooks flipped open on their own, always to pages about drowning, old rituals, and river gods, water stains spreading across the words in the shape of reaching hands. One morning, her uniform appeared dripping wet, river weeds falling from its folds though the dome was bone dry. And always, there was laughter somewhere in the distance, not human laughter, but something older, hungrier. The students whispered that Edeora was cursed, chosen by the river goddess who always claimed the brightest. They remembered the others, Nkem, who drowned in the pool though she was the best swimmer in school. Funmi, who hung herself the night before her university interview. Chidinma, who vanished on a rainy night, her bed soaked with river water though she slept on the third floor. Meanwhile, Chioma could not escape the whispers in her ears. Night after night they grew louder, seeping through walls and hymns alike, until finally, she made a choice: she would return to the locked storeroom and uncover the truth. Inside, she found a nightmare. The room had been transformed into a shrine, not to God, but to something older. Symbols crawled along the walls. Jars lined the shelves, each labeled with the names of missing girls, filled with their hair, nails, and teeth. Stacks of exam papers gleamed with perfect scores, stained in what looked like blood. At the center sat a bronze bowl filled with black water. Chioma gasped as faces rose from the depths, young girls, their mouths twisted in silent screams. Among them was Chidinma, the head girl who had disappeared 3 years earlier. Her lips moved, whispering directly into Chioma's soul, "Run, sister. Run before she adds you to the collection. The goddess is always hungry." The door slammed shut. And there stood headmistress Adesewa, Adora's mother. Calmly, she revealed the truth. 40 years ago, desperate to save a failing school, Adesewa had turned to the river goddess. In exchange for glory and endless success, the goddess demanded sacrifices, the school's brightest daughters. From then on, every miracle result, every scholarship, every success story had been paid for in blood. And now, the goddess wanted Edeora, her own child. That night, the assembly hall became an altar. Edeora, dressed in white, stood trembling as her mother lit candles that cast unnatural shadows. The bronze bowl reflected not the ceiling but the storming sky outside. Then the river goddess emerged through the great mirror, vast, beautiful, and terrible. Her voice filled the hall. "Where is my offering? Where is the bright star you promised me?" Edeora screamed as the truth broke over her. "Mama! How could you?" But Adesewa only knelt and whispered, "Take her. Take my greatest treasure. Let the school's glory continue." The goddess laughed, the sound like drowning. "Foolish woman. A mother who feeds her own child has nothing left to bargain with." Water surged across the hall, pulling both mother and daughter toward the mirror. Their screams blended into one final cry before the river swallowed them whole. Alone, Chioma heard the goddess's voice one last time: "You who uncovered the truth, you have a choice. Forget and live in ignorance, or remember, and carry the weight of what you've seen." By morning, Adesewa and Edeora were gone. The official story was simple: they had fled in the night. Mrs. Ebra became headmistress, locked the storeroom, and removed the cursed mirror. But Chioma knew the truth. The hunger had not ended. Students whispered that on stormy nights, drums echoed through the halls. Voices cried from behind locked doors, and mirrors sometimes showed pale hands reaching out, beckoning with promises of success at a terrible price. The cause of Saint Agness lived on. The goddess's hunger was eternal, her patience infinite. And sooner or later, another bright girl, another desperate parent, another ambitious leader would feed the cycle again. Because at Saint Agness, excellence always demanded sacrifice, and some prices are paid not in effort or money, but in souls. The end.